Sometimes, without even realizing it, we start to shrink around certain people. Not because we're weak, but because somewhere along the way, we learned that being fully ourselves doesn't always feel safe. You might notice it when you meet someone new. You hold back a little. You laugh less. You hide your real opinions. Not on purpose. It's like your mind quietly asks, who do I need to be accepted here? What version of me will keep the peace? This is the beginning of disappearance. Carl Jung might say, this is what happens when the ego becomes over-reliant on the external world for approval. We stop forming ourselves from the inside out, and instead begin constructing a version of ourselves shaped entirely by those around us. It's like clay being pressed into molds, one for work, one for friends, one for love. And eventually, the original shape fades. Take the example of a friend who never says no. She's warm, supportive, the nice one. But she's always exhausted, always silently simmering. Why? Because she's become a character in everyone else's story, except her own. She doesn't exist as herself, only as who others need her to be. Or think about someone who's agreeable to a fault, never pushes back, always laughs when others do, even if the joke cuts a little too close. Over time, this person stops being a person. They become a mirror, reflecting, not being. This is not kindness. This is survival, and it has a cost. Chapter 1. Why you are being used. You don't realize it at first, the feeling of being used. It doesn't show up like a warning siren. It's subtle. It's a slight unease when your phone buzzes and it's them again. The friend who only calls when they need something. The colleague who's always just checking in when they're falling behind. You start to feel more like a tool, useful, but not seen. Carl Jung believed we all have a shadow. The parts of us we repress or ignore. And often, our inability to set boundaries comes from this shadow. We want to be liked. We want to be accepted. But that desire, if unexamined, turns into a pattern, overextending, overgiving, over-explaining. Before long, you've trained the world to expect your self-betrayal. Perhaps you're always the one staying late at work, always picking up the slack. One day, you finally say no, and they react with shock or disgust. Why? Not because you acted in the wrong manner, but because you acted differently. You stopped fitting the little mold they'd crafted for you, the version of you they needed, the version they used to cover up their own cracks. Or picture a relationship where one person always compromises, always listens, always adjusts, always gives. It feels noble, until one day they realize they've disappeared in the name of harmony. Their needs are invisible, their voice muted. Not because anyone silenced them, but because they slowly silenced themselves. It's not that the world is full of cruel people taking advantage. It's that we often create the conditions for our own neglect, by assuming that our role is to make others comfortable, even at the cost of our own discomfort. But that's not compassion. That's quiet self-abandonment. Chapter 2. The tyranny of emotional responsibility. We often hear that empathy is a virtue, and it is. But Jung would remind us that when empathy turns into a reflexive habit of self-abandonment, it ceases to serve anyone. If you're always the one calming others, absorbing their emotions, giving without boundaries, then whose emotions are you ever really allowed to feel? Many of us learned, often unconsciously, that we must manage the emotional temperature of a room. We scan for tension, adjust our tone, apologize before we've done anything wrong. Over time, this becomes so automatic we forget it's not natural. It's programming. Imagine this. You're at a dinner with friends. Someone makes an awkward comment and silence falls. Instantly, you fill the space. Change the topic, crack a joke, smooth things over. You become the social glue. But glue isn't seen. It just holds everything else together. Now, ask yourself, who taught you to be glue? This is the tyranny of emotional responsibility. And Jung might suggest that this compulsion often emerges from the shadow, the parts of ourselves we have disowned. Maybe you learned early on that love was conditional, that to be safe, you had to be useful. So now you barter care for belonging, not knowing it's costing you yourself. To break this cycle, you must reclaim your inner center. Let people sit in silence. Let others hold discomfort. Let the room be awkward. That tension, it's not always yours to fix. Chapter 3. Identity as Performance. Jung's theory of the persona, the social mask we wear, is vital here. He understood that we all have a public face, a role we play, but when the role becomes fused with the self, we lose the ability to separate who we truly are from who we think we must be. You may be praised for being the strong one, or the nice one, or the one who never complains. At first, it feels good, like affirmation, but after a while, that label becomes a prison. You no longer ask for help. You smile when you're crumbling. You're so good at acting okay that people forget to ask if you are. This is identity as performance, and it's exhausting. Jung would say this is a form of unconscious living. We take on these roles in order to survive socially, but they disconnect us from our deeper, more instinctual selves, our self with a capital S. And ironically, while trying to be liked, we erase the very thing that could allow us to be known. A real-life example. A nurse is beloved at work. She's always available, always smiling, never says no to an extra shift. But at home, she's numb. She doesn't know what she wants, only what others need. Over years, her life has shrunk into a shape that no longer fits. She can't rest because she's never off stage. And the hardest part, people don't see her suffering. They only see her compliance. The lesson here isn't to stop being kind. It's to stop turning kindness into currency. You don't owe the world a version of yourself that performs at the cost of your peace. You can be seen without being consumed. You can matter without being used. Chapter 4. The Myth of Selflessness. We're often told that the highest form of love is selflessness, that to be good, to be kind, we must give endlessly, of our time, our energy, our hearts. But there's a dangerous myth hiding in that message. Real compassion has boundaries. Without them, it's not kindness. It's self-neglect, wearing a mask of virtue. Carl Jung wrote about individuation, the psychological process of becoming whole. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about reclaiming what we abandoned in ourselves to fit in, to be loved, to survive. And for many of us, one of the first things we gave up was our assertiveness. The ability to say, "No, I'm not available." To admit, "This drains me." To dare to disappoint someone else in order to remain loyal to ourselves. We buried the part of us that knew how to choose self-respect over approval, and we called it nobility. We called it being nice. But it's not niceness. It's erasure. In reality, compassion without boundaries isn't sainthood. It's self-abandonment. Does this feel like a wake-up call? Perhaps it's opening up parts of your mind you have never explored. This is just the beginning of our deep delve into Carl Jung's work. So if you want to learn more in-depth philosophy from this genius mind, subscribe and turn on notifications. Now, back on with the show. Chapter 5. Your hidden role. Take a moment. Reflect. Are you always the fixer in your friendships? The one people call when they're falling apart, but never when they're celebrating? Are you the caretaker in your relationship? Monitoring moods, smoothing over conflict, preempting every emotional storm before it starts? These roles don't appear by accident. They're scripts you've learned, often in childhood. Maybe you grew up with emotionally volatile parents. Maybe love was conditional, only given when you performed, pleased or soothed. So you learn to survive by attuning to everyone else's needs before your own. Now, even as an adult, you carry that same role into every connection. But here's the catch. You don't know you're doing it. It feels natural, familiar. So familiar that the absence of it feels wrong. You're not broken for falling into these patterns, but you do need to become conscious of them, because until you name the rule, you can't step off the stage. Chapter 6. The Ego's Fantasy of Mastery. There's a seductive feeling that comes with overextending. It feels like strength. You're the glue holding everything together. You're needed, important, the reliable one. But Jung would ask, is that really power? Or is it fear wearing the costume of control? The fear of being seen as a burden. The fear of losing people if you don't make yourself useful. The fear that your worth depends on how much you give. So you overfunction in every room you enter. You anticipate needs before they're spoken. You apologize for existing with needs of your own. And the cruel irony is this: the more you give, the more invisible you become. Not because people are cruel, but because you've trained them not to look. You control through service. You grip tight by giving, but it's not control, it's self-erasure. And here's the hard truth. They keep using you because you keep making it easy. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but habitually. We teach people how to treat us through the 1,000 tiny permissions we give away every day. So what does rebellion look like? It's quiet. It's the pause before you say yes. It's letting silence stretch after someone makes a demand. It's choosing discomfort now to avoid resentment later. It's sitting in the awkwardness of someone else's disappointment and not rushing to fix it. It's remembering that saying no isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And clarity is kindness, especially to yourself, because you are never meant to live your life in service of keeping everyone else comfortable while your own soul starves. Chapter 7. Boundaries are not walls. There's a misconception that having boundaries means becoming cold or selfish. That saying no is a rejection of love. But boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're the lines that keep you in. They say, this is where I end and where you begin. And that distinction is essential. Jung believed that individuation is not just about expansion, but definition. Not about being everything for everyone, but being someone for yourself. Imagine a life where you're no longer exhausted by your relationships. Where your presence is given freely, not dragged out by guilt. Where love is exchanged, not extracted. That's what boundaries make possible. We often deny the parts of us that don't match our idea of the good person. The assertive part, the angry part, the part that wants space, that says no, that sets limits, the part that's had enough. We've been taught that to be loved, we must be agreeable. That to be worthy, we must be soft. That discomfort in others is our fault to fix. So we exile the pieces of us that disrupt the peace. We call them selfish, impatient, unkind. But as Jung said, what you deny doesn't vanish. It doesn't dissolve or disappear. It sinks deeper into the shadow. And when you never let these parts speak, they don't go silent, they wait. They leak out sideways. In passive aggression, in irritability, in quiet resentment, in a smile that doesn't reach the eyes, in exhaustion that has nothing to do with sleep. What if your irritation isn't a flaw to fix but a signal? A voice whispering that you've betrayed yourself again. That somewhere, in trying to be good, you became invisible. It's easy to perform gentleness, to rehearse patience while holding your breath, to say yes when your body is screaming no. Much harder to embody it from a place of honesty. To bring calm, not through suppression, but through integration. To be kind without abandoning truth. The truth is, when you begin to honor your wholeness, Not just the polished pieces, but the raw and inconvenient ones. Your presence becomes deeper, more grounded, more trustworthy, not less. Chapter 8. Strength Redefined. Strength is often misunderstood. We tend to measure it in silence, in stoicism, in the ability to endure what hurts us without flinching. We celebrate the ones who keep going, even when they're breaking inside. We confuse numbness with resilience. But real strength isn't how much you can carry or how long you can suppress your voice. It's how much truth you're willing to stand in, fully, openly, and without shrinking. It's having the courage to look someone in the eye and say, "I won't abandon myself just to keep you comfortable." It's choosing honesty when people expect performance. It's staying soft in a world that rewards hardness. It's crying without shame. It's setting boundaries that disappoint others but protect your peace. Strength is knowing your limits and owning them without apology. It's not the absence of fear. It's moving forward without betraying who you are. Not everyone will understand that kind of strength. It doesn't roar, it doesn't demand, it doesn't dominate. But it stands unshaken in its own quiet power. This isn't weakness, this is sovereignty. If this video has sparked something deep within you, a memory, a discomfort, a quiet nod of recognition, then it's done its job. Carl Jung didn't offer easy answers, but he offered a mirror. And sometimes the hardest thing is looking into it honestly. You're not broken. You've just been bending too far for too long. So here's your moment to return to yourself. Comment below. What part hit home for you, and how does it show up in your own life? This community is a place for reflection, honesty, and growth. If that speaks to you, subscribe. Strap in. This isn't the last time we'll hear Carl Jung's name.